You will hear this story for the first time only in this video. Do not forget to write your comments about the story. Have a good listen. Henry had always been fascinated by the supernatural, so when he heard rumors of strange happenings in the old cemetery on the outskirts of town, he decided to investigate. One foggy evening, he ventured into the cemetery with only a flashlight in his hand and his curiosity. The air was thick with mist, and the ancient trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches casting eerie shadows on the ground. Henry had heard stories of ghostly apparitions and strange sounds coming from the graveyard, and though he was a skeptic, he couldn't resist the lure of the unknown. As he walked among the old crumbling tombstones, he felt an eerie chill that seemed to seep into his bones. The fog thickened and drowned out the sounds of the night. The flashlight beam cut through the mist, casting long, wavering shadows. Henry's footsteps seemed unnaturally loud against the silence, echoing off the stone markers and mausoleums. He passed graves dating back to the 1800s, their inscriptions worn by time. The further he walked, the thicker the fog became, until it was almost a solid wall around him. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered and went out, plunging him into darkness. Trying to remain calm, he flicked the flashlight, but it remained dim. Panic started to bubble up inside him. He slapped the side of the flashlight, muttering curses under his breath, but it was no use. He was alone in the dark, with only the muffled sounds of the night for company. He could feel his heartbeat quicken, each beat a hammer in his chest. Henry heard a faint whisper in the silence, murmuring as if just out of reach. He spun around in circles trying to identify the source, but the whispers seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere. His heart was pounding as he searched for his phone, hoping to use its light. The whispers grew louder, forming words that he couldn't quite make out, and seemed to circle him like a swarm of unseen insects. Just as he was about to unlock his phone, a cold hand grasped his shoulder. Henry turned around, but no one was there. Panicked, he started running, tripping over roots and gravestones. The whispers grew louder, turning into eerie chants that echoed through his mind. He could feel eyes watching him in the dark, and the feeling of unseen hands brushing against him sent shivers down his spine. He didn't know where he was running to. He just needed to get away from whatever was out there. The fog twisted around him, creating the illusion of figures in the mist. He tripped over a large ornate tombstone and fell hard to the ground. As he lay there, out of breath, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A figure dressed in tattered funeral clothes rose from the mist. Its sunken eyes shone with an unnatural light. The ghost pointed its bony finger at him, and Henry felt a wave of coldness wash over him, paralyzing him with fear. The specter's face was gaunt, its eyes hollow and lifeless, yet they bore into him with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. With a tremendous effort, Henry managed to stand up and run towards the gate. Whispers turned to shrieks, and the ghostly figure appeared to fly after him with an outstretched skeletal hand. Just as he reached the iron gate, he felt a sharp, icy pain in his chest. He stumbled through the gate and collapsed on the ground outside. The gate slammed shut behind him, with a deafening clang. The pain was excruciating, like icy needles piercing his heart. The pain lessened and the whispers became quieter. Trembling, Henry turned and looked at the cemetery, now silent and motionless. The fog began to clear, revealing nothing but old tombstones and empty roads. He stood up, muscles aching, and started walking home, vowing never to return. His mind raced with what he had seen, but he was too shaken to make sense of it. From that night onwards, Henry began having nightmares about the cemetery and its ghostly occupant. In his dreams, he was back among the graves, the whispers surrounding him, the ghostly figure always just behind him. Each night, he would wake up in a cold sweat, the sensation of the ghost's icy grip lingering on his shoulder. He never talked about his experience, but deep down he knew that the border between the living and the dead was thinner than he imagined. Desperate for answers, Henry began researching the history of the cemetery. He discovered that it was the final resting place of many who had died under mysterious circumstances, their souls said to be restless and vengeful. Old newspaper clippings spoke of unexplainable deaths and disappearances in the area. He found accounts of people seeing ghostly apparitions and hearing strange noises, just like he had. One name stood out to him: Elias Thorne, a notorious occultist who had been executed for dark rituals over a century ago. It was said that his spirit still wandered the graveyard, seeking revenge on those who disturbed his eternal slumber. Elias Thorne's history was shrouded in mystery and fear. Tales of his malevolent deeds and the curses he had supposedly cast were legendary in the town. Determined to put an end to his nightmares, Henry decided to confront the ghost of Elias Thorne. He gathered everything he thought he might need: a crucifix, holy water, and a book of ancient prayers. Despite his fear, he knew he had to face the spirit. He couldn't live his life under the constant shadow of fear and dread. He prepared himself mentally for the ordeal, knowing it might be his only chance at peace. On another foggy evening, Henry returned to the cemetery. The air was thick with an ominous silence as he made his way to the spot where he had first encountered the specter. He set up a small altar with his items and began to recite the prayers. The words felt strange on his tongue, foreign and ancient. As he chanted, he felt a presence gathering around him, the air growing colder with each passing second. As he chanted, the fog seemed to close in around him and the temperature dropped sharply. The whispers began again, louder and more insistent. Out of the mist, the figure of Elias Thorne appeared, his eyes burning with malevolence. The ghost's form was more solid than before, its features twisted in a grotesque snarl. It moved towards Henry with a slow, deliberate grace, its gaze locked onto him. Henry continued to recite the prayers, his voice shaking. The ghost advanced, its skeletal hand reaching out towards him. He sprinkled the holy water in a wide arc, and for a moment, the specter recoiled, its form flickering. But Elias Thorne let out a bone-chilling laugh, the sound echoing through the graveyard. "You cannot banish me," the ghost hissed. "I am bound to this place by the blood and souls I have claimed." Panic surged through Henry, but he refused to give up. He held up the crucifix, its silver surface glinting in the dim light. "By the power of the Holy Spirit, I command you to leave," he shouted, his voice firm. The specter screamed, a sound of pure agony, and began to dissolve into the fog. The whispers turned into anguished cries as the ghost was pulled back into the earth. The fog lifted, and the graveyard was silent once more. Exhausted, Henry sank to his knees. He felt a profound sense of relief and peace, knowing that he had finally freed the spirits trapped in the graveyard. As he walked back home, the first light of dawn began to break through the night. He felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a lightness he hadn't felt in weeks. He knew he had faced something truly evil and emerged victorious. In the following days, Henry noticed a change in himself. The nightmares ceased, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He started to delve deeper into paranormal research, determined to understand more about the supernatural and how to help those tormented by it. His experience had left a mark on him, one that he couldn't ignore. Henry began sharing his story with others, not to boast, but to warn. He spoke at local gatherings, sharing his knowledge of the occult and the dangers of meddling with forces beyond our understanding. People listened with rapt attention, many of them having their own brushes with the unexplained. Henry became somewhat of a local expert, his once skeptical nature now tempered with a deep respect for the unknown. Though he would always carry the memories of his terrifying encounters, Henry felt a newfound respect for the supernatural. He understood now that some things were better left undisturbed, their secrets buried deep within the earth, and he knew he would never forget the night he faced the ghost of Elias Thorne. The experience had changed him forever, grounding his life with a sense of awe and caution that he would carry with him until his own time came to rest among the graves. To hear more suspenseful and chilling stories like this one, please consider supporting my channel by subscribing and liking the video. Your support means a lot to me. Thank you!